This is Tom Berkley. Today I'm talking about vitamin D. We're gonna go over all the best foods, the best supplements, what are the actual deficiency levels, the symptoms, the big secrets. So make sure you stick around to the end and don't avoid these mistakes. We're starting now. There's a lot of crazy facts about vitamin D. Studies show 78% of people are deficient. So I looked at this phenomenal study that looked at 308 studies, 81 countries, 8 million people, and it found that almost 78% of people are still deficient. We as doctors, we can order a test and it checks your blood level. And essentially anything less than 30 nanograms per deciliter below is deficient. You're gonna get a whole bunch of symptoms that we're gonna talk about. If you're over 100 nanograms per deciliter, that can cause toxicity of vitamin D. We're gonna go over that as well. Under 30 means you're insufficient. Over 100, it's the risk of getting an overdose. But the reality is you want to be a lot higher than 30. And there's a lot of great studies that show that even being like 110, 120, not necessarily bad, but you would be surprised how little people actually get that high. But if you're close to the equator, there's no real flu season. That's kind of crazy to me. Yes, there's vector-borne viruses like malaria, things like that. But once you start getting up north, diseases go up, autoimmune diseases, depression starts to go up, skin cancer rates even start to go up the further you get away from the sun. And one of the theories behind this is as you go further north, the angle of the sun decreases and we get less UVB light. We're going to talk about some of these things. This study also shows that as obesity rate goes up, vitamin D deficiency goes up. So there's a correlation between obesity and vitamin D deficiency. As we get more obese, our vitamin D deficiency increases. All these symptoms get worse. After COVID, obesity rates went up, and the people that are most vitamin D deficient are people with higher obesity rates. So if you're out of the ideal body mass index, your vitamin D is statistically lower. We're now stuck at home. We're not getting out in the sunlight, and we live in areas where we can't even absorb the sunlight. Vitamin D deficiency symptoms include number 1, bone pain. Vitamin D is very important in calcium absorption and bone health. I have a video where I go over osteoporosis, all the best tips and tricks for osteoporosis. If you have bone pain, if you've had weak bones, joints, arthritis, check out my guides below. But that's one of the deficiencies. It's a deep aching pain in your bones, joints, and muscles. Number 2, muscle weakness. Weakness in the muscles, particularly the ones closest to your trunk, so your butt, your abs, your shoulders. This can happen due to a vitamin D deficiency. Next, we have fatigue, a general feeling of being tired, fatigue. Fatigue is a common symptom associated with vitamin D deficiency. Fractures. As we go further north, away from the equator, away from the sun, the rate of fractures of our bones increases. We get weaker, minor traumas, or even stress can cause damage. This is most common over retirees and menopausal women. Over 25% have osteoporosis. 1 out of 5 people, if you break an ankle or a hip, you will not survive a year. That's terrible statistics, so it's very important to prevent. If you're a child, there's bone deformities such as rickets, bowed legs, depressed chest, delayed growth. As someone with 4 kids, I don't want short kids. They're already little. I have to bend over. It's hard on the back. I want them to be tall. I want them to get up in that top cover and get their own snacks. Frequent illnesses. There's some people that say one of the most important things for immune health is reasonable amounts of vitamin D. Very important. People who are immune deficient, there is a high correlation of vitamin D deficiency with immune deficiency, especially now as we're locked in our house starting in 2020 with this global pandemic. It makes us more at risk for other problems. Mood changes. There is a strong evidence that shows vitamin D is interrelated with depression levels. Further you go up north away from the equator, the higher depression levels get. Especially here in Michigan, I can attest to this. With this whole Michigan sign scandal and poor Jim Harbaugh, I'm getting pretty depressed over all this stuff. Whereas down in the South, in the SEC, everybody's happy, their teams are doing well, and supported by ESPN. And if you give me thumbs down for that, I'm gonna get even more depressed. I can't take it anymore. I actually went to school in Ohio, so please don't destroy me in the comments. We can all get along and we can all be friends, I promise. impaired wound healing. So I see a lot of ulcers, a lot of wounds, diabetic wounds, venous wounds. Check out my guides below. But low vitamin D is connected to poor wound healing. So something to think about. Hair loss. Are you going bald? It is documented that it can cause hair loss. Sleep disturbances. UVB light and vitamin D is associated with sleep. It's also associated with melatonin. I have a full guide on sunlight, vitamin D, melatonin. Check it out below. Is it worth taking melatonin? Can that help you? Find out in my guide down below. Cognitive impairment. Our brain shrink. By the time we're 25 through 40, our brain decreases about 5% per decade. That's kind of crazy. And once you get into the 70s, it can go down even further. We want to do all the proper things like nutrition, exercise, good blood flow, proper vitamins to keep our brain as strong and healthy as possible. And vitamin D is definitely linked to conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. High blood pressure. Vitamin D is associated with high blood pressure. And what's crazy about this too, I go over vitamin K2, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids. I'm not going to go into it in this video. In our video down below, I go over all those supplements that are related to this. It can make a big difference. You can ingest vitamin D2 or D3, but we're focusing on sunlight here. So specifically UVB rays in the wavelength of 280 to 320 convert 7-dihydrocholesterol in a non-enzymatic. So an enzyme is not used. It's very unique. It's a thermal degradation that turns 7-dihydrocholesterol into vitamin D3. Crazy. As you get further away from the equator, so away from the sun, there's more flu seasons. We have weaker immune conditions. There's more autoimmune diseases. That's not conspiracy theory. This is proven by studies. There's more fractures, more osteoporosis, higher rates of depression the further north or south you go. I go over a guide, the exact studies, how much sun you need, how much you get from the sun, what areas don't get any sun at all. So for example, do you know in Boston and in Canada, going from about October to about March, it is virtually impossible to make vitamin D, even if you're naked outside at noon getting sunlight. Vitamin D and sunlight. This is a tricky one right here, but I'm going to go over the specific numbers, and I looked through a lot of data on this. This depends on your skin type, the time of day, your geographic location. So essentially, if you have more melanin, the darker your skin, the less UVB you're going to absorb, and the less vitamin D you're going to produce. If we spend 10 to 30 minutes in the sun with your face, arms exposed, it will provide you with more than enough vitamin D that you need. People worry about skin cancer. Now, I won't get into that. There's a guy that I like, Dr. Berry. He goes over this in detail in his book. He actually get a little bit of heat for this. He correlated the skin rates, and essentially areas further away from the equator where you get less sun had more skin cancer rate, whereas people who got more sun near the equator actually had much less skin cancer rates. Now, there's a lot of factors there. According to Dr. Berry, the skin cancer rates, according to the sun, might be overblown for financial benefit. But essentially, during optimum conditions, it's said that if you're getting sunlight with your face, arms, or upper body exposed, you're getting at least 1,000 units made per hour. If you're outside pretty much all day, you could easily make 8 to 10,000 or more. But if you're just in shorts or underwear sun tanning, you're probably getting a whole lot more than that. So something to consider, your body is meant to take care of this. Here is my countdown of the top 10 best foods, so from worst to best, to get your vitamin D. Number 10, fortified cereals. Cereals in the Western world are fortified with vitamin D. One bowl can give you about 40 to 100 international units per serving. Not a lot, but it can help. Probably not the best way to get it. Number 9, beef liver. Beef liver contains about 40 international units per about 100 gram serving. Probably not the best source. Mushrooms can give you vitamin D. I love mushrooms. Essentially, a 100-gram serving of mushrooms can give you 1 to 800 international units. Egg yolks. I love eggs. I have a great video. Are eggs healthy for you? Are they not healthy? I go over all the studies, all the literature on eggs, whether they're good for you, whether they mess up your cholesterol. Highly recommend you check that out. But egg yolks, one egg can give you 40 international units of vitamin D. So you eat 3-4 eggs, that can give you a decent amount towards your day. Juices. Juices in America, like orange juice, are fortified. They can give you about 150 units. Probably not the best source because of the sugar. Milk. Milk is fortified, so about 150 international units in a glass of milk. But here's kind of the best source. Fish. I go over a video, my top 9 worst fish, my top 3 best fish. Check that out. As we get into the fish, sardines. Canned sardines, about 250 international units per standard serving. Cod liver oil, almost 1,500 international units per tablespoon. Cod liver oil is an amazing source of vitamin D. That's one you might consider taking as a supplement. Fatty fish like mackerel. Mackerel has about 500 international units of vitamin D per 100 gram serving. And salmon. I love salmon. This is one of the best natural sources. 100 gram serving can give you 1,300 international units. I read a great story how Inuits in northern Canada essentially don't get any vitamin D, but they eat so much salmon that their vitamin D levels are not catastrophic. Humanity has evolved to get vitamin D to survive. The practical sources are fortified foods in the United States, in the Western world, and fish. But outside of that, you probably want to supplement. If you're not getting enough sunlight, if you're not in a warm location where you can get like half an hour or more of sunlight per day, you want to consider supplements. Here's the best vitamin D supplements. What should you take? Vitamin D2 or vitamin D3? There are 2 forms. D2 is essentially the plant form. D3 is considered to be the preferred form because this is the active form in the body. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition compared vitamin D2, vitamin D3. The study found that D3 was much more effective in increasing our vitamin D levels. Sometimes doctors will prescribe you the multiple 100,000 unit injection. So you could get like a 500,000 unit injection, but this is rare. You don't need to necessarily do this. Vitamin D supplements usually come in tablets, soft gels. You can take the drops. Usually the drops or cod liver oil or potentially the medium chain fatty acid tablets are the way to go. What's the dosage? The dosage in America is usually about 800 units to about 2,000 units, but so many studies recommend higher amounts. I personally take about 5,000 to 10,000 units. I combine it with vitamin K2, with magnesium, with omega-3 fatty acids. Very important to check that down below. And quality in the brand. Look for reputable brands. Check the reviews. Check if there's certifications from the USP or Consumer Lab. The reality is consumers have lost some faith in some of these large government organizations. Want to read the reviews too. That might be a better way to go. I put some of my favorites down below. And the trick is really, no matter what supplement you're taking, you could have a bad batch. There was a lawsuit where one guy was taking supplements that were mislabeled, and he essentially took 1 million units per day for 2 months. He developed a toxicity. When he stopped taking the pills, it went back to normal. It's almost like nothing went wrong for him. That's one case. I don't recommend taking 1 million units. That's crazy. Stick to the recommended ranges. But we're going to talk about toxicity and blood levels at the end as well. There are a ton of great vitamin D books, and a lot of the times, rather than studies, these doctors prescribe it to their patients. So these are secondhand accounts, but Dr. Judson Somerville says that he's given his patients, like thousands of them, 10,000 units per day without any problems. Dr. Stephen Gundry, you probably see his ads all over the place, but he says the same thing, although he's getting some heat lately. And probably the best and most famous researcher is Dr. Michael Holick. He is the authority on vitamin D. His books basically recommend there's not as much risk as we think, and the benefits of vitamin D are huge. He strongly recommends taking larger than recommended amounts previously. The real trick is taking combination. I go over vitamin K2, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, boron, zinc, a practical guide. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars every month. I know these things aren't free. They're not free, but the benefits of not getting sick, all these deficiencies, 100% worth it in my opinion. I recommend it to all my family members. That's why I make these videos. I'm such a big believer. Realistically, getting proper nutrition levels compared to what any doctor like myself can do, by far more important. You want to help with these basic things you can control. Don't let the big industries, don't let doctors take ownership from you. You are in charge of your body and you are the best doctor for yourself. So do your research, but then double check me as well. If I'm getting this stuff wrong, give me a thumbs down, give me a thumbs up, tell me if I'm missing something. What's the best time to take vitamin D? Best time is to take it with a meal, especially if you're getting some fat, helps absorb it, because vitamin D is a fatty vitamin. A, D, E, and K are fat soluble vitamins. So you want to take those with a meal, morning or evening. Doesn't really matter. I usually take mine in the morning. You want to be consistent. You don't want to forget. And you want to avoid taking medications that can interfere with this. That's why you want to talk with your doctor if you're on a complicated regimen, if you have some unique genetic issues, but really it's personal preference. Just keep up with it. And vitamin D toxicity. This is one thing that I keep an eye on. In the media, I see a lot of articles scaring people about toxicity. The reality is I look over all the studies, I look over lawsuits, different things that are published in case reports. There's hardly any. And the reality is, even that one case where this guy was actually taking 1 million units every single day, the second you stop, you kind of get back from doing it. Signs of a deficiency are weakness, fatigue, throwing up, nausea, chills, but you stop taking it, you're gonna go back. Just don't go crazy. I've had some patients in the past that go crazy with vitamins. Take a reasonable range. Don't go into like the 50,000+ range. That's extreme. Am I wrong? If there's other studies, let me know. But here's the big secret. There is a 78% deficiency. People are just not taking enough. And the risk reward of taking it versus not taking it, in my opinion, is like 101. Nothing in this world is safe. I could get hit by a comet right now. It could blow me up. We could be living in the Matrix right now. The reality is, for most people, vitamin D is deficient and it would highly benefit you. So many benefits from it, especially if you live in northern countries. The big secret is sunlight in Canada, in northern United States, in Europe, unless you live in like the warm part of Europe, you're probably not getting any UVB light from around the November to about the March range. The winter months, the angle of the sun is just too low. You're not getting it. In the north, the tricky part is from about November to about March, the sun is south. So you're not getting a lot of rays, especially in North America, in Europe, in Russia, northern China. And this is why I mentioned a lot of these illnesses like autoimmune illnesses, osteoporosis, the vitamin D deficiency symptoms, they're seen in a lot greater quantities in these areas above 35 degrees north and below 35 degrees south. But below 35 degrees south, there's not a whole lot of population in the world. It is actually possible to use a sun lamp. Now, there's a lot of brands out there, and I looked this up. The studies aren't very conclusive. That means nobody really paid to do the studies, how much you need for how long, but they recommend, 5 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. That's all you need to convert your skin to your level, to your kidneys, and get your vitamin D. So that basically means your 7-dihydrocholesterol level can be converted by 5 minutes with this lamp to pre-vitamin D3 to get your normal levels. Now, there's no real studies verifying this, so tell me what you think. They are about $600 or more, so they're not the cheapest thing in the world. So the big secret is move to Florida, move somewhere warm, stop working suntan all day. If you can't do that, supplements really help. I go over vitamin D, how you got to combine it with vitamin K2, because vitamin D moves calcium from your stomach into your blood. Vitamin K2 takes it from your blood and puts it into the bone and prevents it from your arteries. Omega-3 fatty acids, they decrease your body's inflammation. Magnesium, involved in 600+ enzymes in the body. Hey, guess what? It's even involved in making vitamin D. If you didn't have magnesium, you could not make vitamin D. And guess what? These are all deficient as well. The WHO says vitamin K2, we only get about 5 to 25% of what we used to get. Magnesium, 60+% of people are thought to be deficient. Omega-3 fatty acids, we're supposed to have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. In America right now, it's about 25 omega-6 to about 1 omega-3. Get that taken care of. Even more important, exercise, muscle strengthening. In order, my 5 most important things for your health are strengthen your muscles. Number 2, cardio. Number 3, great sleep. Number 4, great diet. Number 5, supplements. So supplements are not the only answer. Get those things. Me and Coach Ryan go over a 30-day course, how to turn around your health in 30 days. Check that out.